For 40 years, my grandma lived in poverty, wearing the same torn clothes and eating from broken plates, but one day, her long-lost daughter returned in a billionaire's limousine. What she revealed that night shocked the entire village and changed our lives forever. Face screaming in fear, don't miss this story. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss what happens next. Grandma was sitting on the wooden bench outside her small mud house, her hands shaking, her old eyes wet with tears, when the black limousine stopped in front of her gate. Nobody in our entire neighborhood had ever seen such a car before. The driver quickly stepped out and opened the back door. And that was when we saw her. A tall woman stepped out, dressed in a shining white gown that looked more expensive than everything Grandma owned in her lifetime. Around her neck were diamonds that sparkled under the sun. Her shoes clicked sharply against the stones as she walked toward us. She was like a queen who had stepped into the world of the poor. Then she spoke. "Mother," she said in a soft but trembling voice. "It's me. I am your daughter. I am a billionaire now, and I've come back with a secret that will change everything." The neighbors gasped. I nearly dropped the plate of food I was holding. Grandma froze, her lips trembling, her wrinkled fingers clutching her wrapper so tightly I thought it might tear. The world around us seemed to stand still. A billionaire daughter? A secret? None of us could understand. And then, before Grandma could even answer, the woman leaned closer and whispered something in her ear that made Grandma fall to her knees with a loud cry. That was the moment everything changed. But to understand how we got here, I have to take you back to where it all began. Grandma was not always old and tired. She once had the strength of a lioness. She had raised her 3 children alone after her husband died in a tragic accident when she was only 30 years old. She washed clothes for rich families, carried heavy baskets of firewood, and sold tomatoes in the market just to feed her children. The roof of her house leaked when it rained, and the floor was always damp. She owned only 2 wrappers and 1 old scarf, yet she wore them with pride. The neighbors respected her. They called her the strongest woman in the street, but behind closed doors, Grandma cried many nights. She had dreams of giving her children a better life, but poverty tied her down like chains. Her eldest son, David, left home at a young age, chasing work in the city. The second child, Mary, married a struggling farmer. And then there was the youngest, Rose. Rose was different. Rose had big dreams, dreams bigger than the sky. She would always tell Grandma, "One day, I will become rich, and I'll come back for you." But one day, Rose disappeared. She left without saying goodbye. No one knew where she went, not even Grandma. Years passed, then decades. 40 years of silence. No letters.
No visits.
No sign of Rose. The neighbors whispered that maybe Rose was dead. Others said she had abandoned her poor family to live a better life somewhere far away. Every time Grandma heard those words, her heart broke even more. But still, she never stopped praying. Every night, she whispered, "God, please protect my daughter. Please let me see her before I die." Those 40 years were full of highs and lows. Sometimes Grandma had a little money from selling vegetables and could cook a pot of soup for the children in the neighborhood. But other times, she would go to bed hungry, her stomach empty, her tears wetting her pillow. She never owned a phone, never had electricity, never even wore a pair of new shoes. Her life was the picture of poverty. And yet, through all this, Grandma's heart was pure. She helped neighbors even when she had nothing. She gave food to orphans, shared her water with passers-by, and offered her little bench to strangers who needed rest. Her kindness was her only wealth. But deep down, she carried the pain of one question. Where was Rose? Why had her daughter abandoned her? One day, while Grandma was returning from the market with a basket of tomatoes on her head, she fainted by the roadside. I was there when it happened. People rushed to help her, pouring water on her face until she woke up weak and trembling. The doctor later said it was hunger mixed with exhaustion. That was when I truly saw how much Grandma was suffering. It was around this time that strange things began happening. Mysterious letters arrived at the post office, but with no sender's name. Each letter carried only money, big amounts, wrapped neatly in brown envelopes. Grandma at first refused to take it, thinking it was a mistake. But the letters kept coming. She asked everyone in the village who might be sending the money, but nobody knew. Some said it was a blessing from God. Others whispered it might be a trap. But Grandma's heart told her something different. She believed the letters had something to do with Rose. She prayed harder. She waited longer. She told me one night as we sat by the fire, "Child, my Rose is alive. I can feel it. And one day, she will return." The next day, a black limousine pulled up in front of Grandma's house. And out stepped the billionaire daughter she hadn't seen in 40 years, carrying a secret that shook us all. And then, just when Grandma was about to tell us what the whispered secret was, suddenly, the ground beneath her seemed to shake. Someone screamed from the other side of the street. A man ran toward us, shouting words that froze our blood. That was when the extreme event happened. The man was running so fast his shirt was almost falling off his shoulders, and his voice shook as he shouted, "Fire! Fire in the village!" Everyone turned their heads at once. Thick black smoke was rising into the sky from the far end of the street. The fire was spreading quickly, swallowing the small wooden houses one after the other. People screamed, children cried, women carried buckets of water, but the flames were too strong. Grandma, still on her knees after hearing Rose's whispered secret, struggled to her feet. "My God," she cried. "That's Mary's house." Mary, Grandma's second child, lived just a few houses away. Without thinking, Grandma tried to run toward the fire, but her legs were too weak. Rose quickly grabbed her arm and said, "Mother, let me handle this." Her driver rushed back to the limousine, pulled out a walkie-talkie, and within minutes, 2 fire trucks appeared on the road, shiny red, with sirens blaring. The villagers stared in shock. In all their lives, they had never seen fire trucks arrive so quickly. Some people dropped their buckets and just watched, their mouths open. The firemen fought hard, and after what felt like an endless battle, the flames finally died down. Half of Mary's house was gone, but the family escaped unharmed. The villagers cheered and clapped for the firemen, but their eyes kept turning back to Rose. Who was this woman? How did she have such power? And what was the secret she whispered to Grandma? When the fire was under control, Rose returned to Grandma, her gown slightly stained with smoke. She held her mother's wrinkled hands, tears running down her face. "Mother," she said, her voice trembling, "I know I abandoned you for 40 years. But I never forgot you. I built an empire. I became one of the richest women in the country, but I carried your face in my heart every single day." Grandma shook her head slowly, tears running down her cheeks. "Then why, Rose? Why did you never come back? Do you know how many nights I cried? Do you know how many days I begged God to show me your face again?" Rose bowed her head. "Because of the secret, Mother. The secret I just told you. The reason I could not return." I leaned closer, desperate to hear, but Rose lowered her voice again. Only Grandma could hear her words. And once more, Grandma's body shook as though the earth itself trembled inside her bones. The neighbors began to murmur. "What's going on? What is she telling her? Why is the old woman crying like that?" The suspense grew so heavy it felt like the whole village was holding its breath. Finally, Grandma stood up. Her frail body looked stronger than before, her back straight, her eyes blazing like fire. She faced the crowd and said, "My daughter has come back. She has suffered and sacrificed more than you all can imagine. But she has also returned with a truth that will shock this entire family." The murmurs grew louder. Everyone wanted to know. Everyone leaned closer. But just as Grandma opened her mouth to reveal the secret, a loud crash shook the air. A tree branch, burnt from the fire, snapped and fell onto the road, missing the limousine by inches. People screamed and ran. Rose's driver shouted, "Ma'am, we must leave now. It's not safe here." "No," Rose said firmly. "I am not leaving without telling them." But before she could say another word, Mary came running forward, her clothes covered in ash, her eyes wild with anger. She pointed at Rose and screamed, "You don't belong here. Leave us alone. After 40 years, you dare to come back with your riches? You are not welcome." The crowd gasped. Grandma clutched her chest in shock. Rose froze, tears still glistening on her cheeks. And that was when another extreme event hit us like a thunderbolt. Mary dropped to her knees in front of everyone and shouted words that tore through the crowd like a blade. "She is not even your daughter, Mother." The world seemed to stop. The villagers gasped so loudly it felt like the sky cracked open. Grandma staggered, her face drained of all color. Rose stood frozen, her diamonds glittering in the dying sun, but her eyes wide with pain. And in that silence, the truth began to bleed into the open. The moment Mary's words tore through the crowd, silence fell heavy on us like a thick blanket. Even the children who had been crying a moment ago stopped. The villagers froze, their eyes darting between Grandma, Mary, and Rose. "She is not even your daughter, Mother." Mary's voice cracked with anger and pain. Her chest rose and fell as though she had carried those words inside her for years, waiting for the moment to release them. Grandma stumbled backward, her hand pressed against her chest. "Mary," she whispered, her voice trembling, "what are you saying?" Mary's eyes filled with tears, but her anger burned through them. "I'm saying the truth. All my life, I have carried this secret. You never told us the full story, Mother. But I found out. I know who she really is." Gasps rose from the neighbors. Some covered their mouths with their hands. Others leaned closer, desperate not to miss a single word. Rose stood perfectly still, her body stiff, her face pale. For the first time since she stepped out of that limousine, the confidence of a billionaire melted away, replaced by fear. Grandma's lips quivered. "Mary, stop this madness. Do not speak words you will regret." But Mary shook her head violently. "No, Mother. I will not be silent anymore. While you suffered in poverty, while we went hungry and slept on cold floors, Mary pointed at Rose, her finger trembling. "She was living in another world. Because she does not belong to us. She is not my sister. She is not your child." The crowd gasped again. Some shouted, "Impossible." Others murmured, "Could this be true?" I stood frozen, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. How could Rose not be Grandma's daughter? Had we lived in a lie for 40 years? Grandma's knees buckled, and she almost fell, but Rose quickly caught her, wrapping her arms around her mother. Tears streamed down Rose's face. "No, Mother. Don't listen to her. You are my mother.
You raised me.
You loved me. I am your child." But Mary stepped closer, her voice shaking with fury. "Then tell them, Rose. Tell them the truth about where you came from. Tell them why you disappeared for 40 years. Tell them about the blood you carry that is not ours." The villagers' murmurs grew louder, like a storm building in the distance. Some believed Mary. Others defended Rose. "How can you say such a thing to your own sister?" one woman shouted. "Shame on you," another man cried. But doubt had already planted its seed. Grandma buried her face in her hands, whispering prayers under her breath. "God, give me strength. God, guide me." Then suddenly Rose lifted her head. Her face was no longer fearful. It was calm, yet heavy with sorrow. She took a deep breath and spoke in a voice that shook the very air. "Mary is right." The crowd erupted. People shouted, some in shock, some in anger, some in confusion. Grandma froze, her hands dropping from her face, her eyes wide with disbelief. Rose held her ground, though tears fell freely down her cheeks. "It is true. I am not your daughter by blood." Grandma let out a wail so painful it pierced through everyone's hearts. She staggered forward and clutched Rose's arms.
"No, don't say that.
Don't you ever say that. You are mine. I carried you. I raised you. I loved you." But Rose gently shook her head. "Mother, please. The truth can no longer be hidden. The secret I whispered to you earlier, this is it. I was not born from your womb, but I was born from your heart." The villagers stood in stunned silence. Even the birds in the trees seemed to stop singing. Rose's voice trembled as she continued. 40 years ago, you took me in. You gave me a name. You gave me love. You gave me life. I owe everything to you. But because of the truth of my bloodline, I was forced into a life far away from you. That is why I disappeared. That is why I could not come back until now. Grandma collapsed to her knees, clutching her wrapper. Tears poured down her face like rain. She whispered again and again, "No, no, no." Mary, however, crossed her arms, her jaw tight.
See?
I told you. She is not one of us. The crowd began to argue loudly. Some shouted, "She is still your sister." Others yelled, "No, she's an outsider." The tension grew so thick it was hard to breathe. I stood frozen, torn between pity for Grandma, anger at Mary, and confusion about Rose. My mind swirled with questions. If Rose wasn't really Grandma's daughter, then who was she? Where did she come from? And why was she forced to leave for 40 years? Rose turned to Mary, her eyes blazing with pain. I may not share your blood, Mary, but I share Mother's love. And nothing can erase that. Mary stepped forward until she was face to face with Rose. Then prove it. Prove to all of us who you really are. Tell us everything. Or leave this place forever. The villagers went silent again, waiting, watching. Rose looked around, at the broken house still smoking from the fire, at the faces of neighbors filled with doubt, at Grandma on her knees, trembling with grief. Her lips parted, as though she was finally ready to reveal the full truth. But just as she opened her mouth, a car screeched to a halt on the road. A man in a black suit stepped out. His face was hidden by dark glasses, but his presence was powerful, almost threatening. He pointed at Rose and shouted, "Don't say another word. If you reveal the truth, you put everyone here in danger." The crowd screamed in fear. Some ran back, others hid behind the trees. Grandma clutched her chest, her eyes wide with terror. Mary gasped, and Rose froze, her body stiff as stone. Because the man was someone she clearly knew. The man in the black suit stood tall and intimidating, his dark glasses hiding his eyes. His voice thundered through the crowd again, sharper this time. "Rose, do not speak another word. If you value your life and theirs," he pointed at all of us, "you will keep the truth hidden." The villagers gasped. Some clutched their children closer. Others whispered nervously, "Who is he? Why is he protecting her secret? What danger could there be?" Grandma, weak but defiant, struggled to her feet. Her voice cracked with emotion as she shouted, "Who are you to silence my daughter? This is my home, my family. You cannot come here and threaten us." The man's expression didn't change. He removed his glasses, revealing cold, sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through everyone. He looked directly at Grandma. "With respect, ma'am, you have no idea what forces you are dealing with. The truth your daughter wants to reveal is not just about family. It is bigger than this village, bigger than you can imagine. If it comes out, blood will spill." The words sent shivers down my spine. The villagers broke into loud murmurs. Some said, "What could be so dangerous?" Others whispered, "Maybe she's connected to powerful people." Fear spread like smoke among us. Rose's body trembled. She clenched her fists, her voice breaking.
No.
"I will not be silenced. I have carried this weight for 40 years. I cannot carry it anymore." The man stepped closer, lowering his voice, but the entire crowd strained to hear. "Rose, if you speak, you will destroy not only yourself, but everyone you love. Do you want your mother to die in shame? Do you want this entire village to suffer because of your truth?" Grandma clutched Rose's arm, her eyes wide with fear. "Child, is this true? Will your words bring such danger?" Rose turned to her, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Mother, I cannot lie anymore. I cannot live in shadows. But—" She paused, choking on her words. "He is right. The truth will shake everything you know." Mary, her face red with rage, shouted, "Then let it shake. I would rather live with the truth than drown in lies." She pushed past the villagers and stood face to face with the man. "You don't scare me. Tell us who you are and why you're here." The man stared at her for a long moment, then smirked. "You are brave, but also foolish. Do you think this is about you? Do you think this is just about family? No, this is about power, wealth, and bloodlines that go back generations. Your sister," he paused, glancing at Rose, "is not who you think she is. And if I reveal her true identity, enemies from far and wide will come for her and for you." The crowd gasped again. Even the air felt heavy. I could barely breathe. My hands shook as I clutched the edge of the bench beside me. Who is Rose? What kind of bloodline could make her life so dangerous? Rose finally spoke, her voice calm but filled with sorrow. "Enough. If they must know, they will hear it from me, not from you." She turned to the villagers, her face shining with tears. "The truth is..." Suddenly, the man reached inside his coat. People screamed, thinking he was pulling out a weapon. Women grabbed their children and ran. But instead, he pulled out a thick brown envelope. He threw it onto the ground at Grandma's feet. "This," he said coldly, "will tell you everything. But once you open it, there is no turning back." The envelope lay there, heavy with mystery. No one moved. The crowd seemed frozen, waiting for Grandma to decide. Grandma bent slowly, her old hands trembling as she picked up the envelope. She held it against her chest, staring at Rose with eyes full of pain and confusion. "Child, should I open it?" Rose nodded, though her body shook. "Yes, Mother. It is time." The villagers leaned in closer, their eyes locked on the envelope. Some whispered prayers. Others held their breath. Grandma slowly tore the seal. The sound of the paper ripping was louder than thunder in that silence. She pulled out several old documents, birth certificates, photographs, and letters yellow with age. Her eyes scanned the papers. At first, her face was blank. Then slowly, her expression changed. Her lips parted. Her hands shook so violently that the papers almost fell to the ground. Finally, Grandma let out a scream so sharp it made my heart stop. She dropped the documents and clutched her chest. "No, oh God, no." The crowd rushed forward, some picking up the papers, others trying to support Grandma. Rose fell to her knees, tears streaming. Mary snatched one of the documents and read it aloud with a trembling voice. This says Rose is the daughter of..." She froze, her voice breaking, her hands trembling so badly she could barely hold the paper. The villagers shouted, "Whose daughter? Tell us." Mary's lips quivered. She turned slowly, her eyes wide with horror. "She is the daughter of the man who destroyed our family 40 years ago." The crowd erupted into chaos. Some screamed, others shouted angrily. Grandma collapsed onto the ground, wailing in pain. Rose covered her face, sobbing uncontrollably. The man in the black suit stood silently, watching the storm unfold. And just as the cries of the villagers reached their peak, a loud gunshot echoed through the air. Everyone froze. The man in the black suit stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder. Blood stained his jacket. Another shot rang out. The villagers screamed and ducked for cover. Rose threw herself over Grandma, shielding her with her own body. And from the shadows at the end of the street, a second figure emerged, holding a gun. The villagers scattered in every direction, screaming in terror. Mothers clutched their children, men ducked behind trees and broken walls, and the entire street became a storm of chaos. The second figure walked slowly out of the shadows, the gun gleaming in his hand. His face was covered with a black mask. The man in the black suit groaned, clutching his bleeding shoulder. He pointed at the gunman with a shaky hand and shouted, "Don't let him speak. If he reveals anything, we are all finished." The gunman raised his weapon again, his voice low and chilling. "Rose, you were never meant to know the truth. None of you were. But since it has already come this far, the past must rise." Rose stood, still shielding Grandma with her body. Her face was pale, but her eyes blazed with courage.
"Who are you?"
"What do you want from us?" The gunman tilted his head slowly. I am the shadow of your bloodline, and I have come to finish what was started 40 years ago. Gasps rippled through the villagers. They whispered, 40 years ago, the accident, the tragedy. Everyone remembered the day Grandma's husband died mysteriously in what was said to be an accident. Grandma's frail body shook violently. She tried to rise, her voice breaking. It was you. You are connected to the man who destroyed my family. The gunman let out a cold laugh. You are sharp, old woman. Yes, I am his son. And rose. His voice darkened as he pointed the gun directly at her. You are my half-sister. The world seemed to stop. The crowd gasped so loudly, it was like thunder rolling through the village. Rose froze, her mouth open in shock, her eyes filling with tears. Grandma screamed and clutched her wrapper. Mary staggered back, her hands covering her face. The gunman continued, his voice filled with venom. My father abandoned me in the shadows, while you, his precious child, were hidden and protected by this poor woman. He gave you the life that was stolen from me. And now, I will take back what is mine, even if I must do it with blood. Rose shook her head violently, tears streaming down her cheeks.
No.
You are wrong. I was not given anything. I lived in pain too. I was taken away from the only mother I knew. I grew up with secrets, with lies, with loneliness. You think wealth erases suffering? It does not. We are both victims of the same man's sins. The gunman faltered, his hand trembling slightly. The crowd went silent, waiting. Even the birds in the trees were quiet. Grandma struggled to her feet, her weak body trembling, but her voice clear and firm. Listen to me, both of you. That man you call father is gone. He destroyed my life. Yes. He took my husband from me. Yes. But if we continue to carry his hatred, then he still wins. Look at you both, brother and sister, pointing guns and tears at each other. Don't you see? The curse must end here. The villagers murmured in agreement. Some cried softly. Others whispered prayers. Rose took a slow step forward, her voice breaking but steady. Brother, if you want revenge, take my life. But do not hurt this woman. She may not share my blood, but she is my real mother. She gave me love when the world gave me nothing. If you must punish someone, punish me, not her. The gunman's hand shook more violently now. His mask could not hide the tears that slipped down his cheeks. He shouted, Stop. Stop talking, but his voice cracked with pain. Grandma raised her trembling hands toward him. Son, you are lost in darkness. But remember this. Hatred does not heal wounds. Love does. I took Rose and not because of blood, but because every child deserves love. And so do you. Even now, I will call you my son if you let go of that gun. The gunman froze. The villagers stared, holding their breath. For a long moment, time itself seemed to pause. Finally, with a loud sob, the gunman dropped the weapon. It clattered against the stones, the sound echoing through the silent street. He fell to his knees, burying his face in his hands. All my life, I only wanted to belong, he wept. Rose ran forward and wrapped her arms around him, despite the danger. Then belong here, with us. We may not share the same past, but we can choose our future. Grandma walked closer, her tears streaming, and placed her old, trembling hand on his head. My son, she whispered, for 40 years I suffered in poverty, but today I see the truth. Love is greater than blood, and forgiveness is richer than gold. The villagers cheered softly, some crying openly. Mary, still shaken, looked away at first, but slowly her anger melted. She walked forward and placed her hand on Rose's shoulder. For the first time in decades, the broken family stood together, scars and all. The man in the black suit, still bleeding, groaned from where he lay. His eyes softened as he watched the scene. Perhaps the curse is finally broken, he muttered before fainting. The limousine driver rushed to call for help. Fire trucks and ambulances returned, not just to put out flames, but to carry away wounds, both physical and emotional. That day, Grandma's house, though broken and poor, became the place of healing. The billionaire daughter had returned, the lost brother had been found, and the village had witnessed a miracle. Life would never be the same again. And the lesson that remained in everyone's hearts was clear. Family is not only by blood. Love, forgiveness, and unity are what truly make a family. Riches fade, secrets crumble, but the power of love remains forever. The sun had begun to set, painting the sky orange and purple as the villagers slowly returned to their homes. But the air was still heavy with everything that had just happened: gunshots, revelations, tears, and forgiveness. Grandma sat quietly on her wooden bench, her wrinkled hands resting on her knees, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Rose sat beside her, her beautiful gown now dirty from kneeling in the dust. Beside her was the masked man, her half-brother, his face uncovered now, showing eyes swollen from crying. He looked broken, fragile, and lost. For the first time, he was not holding a gun but holding his own shaking hands. The villagers kept whispering as they passed by, "So Rose is not truly her daughter. The billionaire woman has returned after 40 years. The man with the gun is her brother." The stories spread like wildfire through the entire village. Some people pitied Grandma, others pitied Rose, but everyone agreed nothing like this had ever happened in their lifetime. Grandma finally broke the silence. Her voice was weak but firm. "Children, blood or no blood, you are mine. This family has suffered enough. Let us not allow hate to lead us again." Rose squeezed her hand and whispered, "Mother, I promise I will not leave you again." Her brother nodded slowly, his eyes lowered. "I do not deserve your forgiveness, but if you will let me, I will stay and serve this family as my way of making peace." For a moment, it seemed as though peace was truly settling. For the first time in decades, Grandma's heart felt lighter. She even smiled through her tears, whispering, "God has answered me. But peace is fragile." And that night it shattered. As darkness fell, the villagers gathered for an emergency meeting in the town square. The chief of the village arrived with his council. He had heard of everything: the fire, the limousine, the billionaire daughter, and the gunman. The council demanded answers. The chief, an old man with a deep voice, stood and addressed Grandma's family. "We cannot ignore what has happened today. Guns have been fired in our streets. Secrets of blood and betrayal have been revealed. And now we must know the truth. Who truly is this woman you call Rose?" The villagers cheered, some demanding she leave, others defending her. "She saved us from the fire," shouted one man. "But she is tied to the man who destroyed our people," shouted another. The voices grew louder, hotter, like sparks waiting to become flames. Rose stood, her heart pounding. She removed the diamonds from her neck and the rings from her fingers, dropping them on the dusty ground. Her voice shook as she spoke. "I am not here to flaunt riches. I am here to give my mother the life she always deserved. Judge me if you must, but do not punish her. She is innocent." The crowd went silent. For a brief moment, the tension softened. But then, Mary stepped forward. Her face was pale, her eyes burning with something deeper than anger, envy. She pointed at Rose and shouted, "You are a curse. From the day you came into this family, our suffering began. It was your father who killed ours. It was you who vanished and left us in poverty. And now you return with guns and blood. You are not my sister. You are my enemy." The crowd erupted again. Some sided with Mary, shouting angrily. Others defended Rose, reminding the people that she had sent money, that she had returned despite danger, that she had saved the village from fire. The air grew thick with division. Grandma stood, tears in her eyes, shouting, "Enough. She is my child, no matter what blood says." But her voice was swallowed by the noise of the crowd. And then, as if the night itself wanted to test them, a chilling voice rang out from the darkness. "You all speak of truth, but none of you know the full truth." The villagers froze. A figure stepped out from behind the chief's hut, cloaked in black, carrying a leather bag. The face was hidden under a hood. Slowly, The stranger lifted the bag and opened it, spilling more old documents, photos, and letters onto the ground. Rose is not the only one with secrets, the stranger said, their voice low and menacing. Your entire family is built on lies. And tonight, I will expose them all. The villagers gasped in shock. Rose's heart pounded. Grandma staggered back, clutching her chest again. Mary's eyes widened, filled with both fear and hunger for what might come next. The hooded stranger bent down, picked up one paper, and held it high for all to see. This, the stranger declared, is the proof that will destroy everything you thought you knew about yourselves. The crowd roared in confusion and fear. The paper shook in the stranger's hand. Rose reached forward, her voice breaking. What proof? Who are you? The hooded figure slowly lifted their head, revealing half their face under the dim moonlight. And what we saw made Grandma collapse to the ground with a scream so loud it silenced the entire square. The hooded stranger lifted their head, and the moonlight revealed a face we never thought we'd see again. It was David, Grandma's first son, the one who had left for the city decades ago and never returned. The crowd erupted in disbelief. Some shouted, "Impossible." Others whispered, "David? He was gone for so long. We thought he was dead." Grandma's scream echoed through the square. She clutched her chest and staggered forward. "David? My son, is it truly you?" David pulled back his hood completely, and his face was worn with age, but unmistakable. His eyes carried shadows of pain, bitterness, and secrets too heavy for one man to bear. He looked directly at Grandma and said, "Yes, Mother. It is me, but I did not come back to embrace you. I came back to reveal the truth you have all hidden." The villagers murmured louder, their curiosity boiling over. Rose stared at him, her heart thumping in fear. Mary froze, her eyes darting nervously. And Grandma trembled, whispering prayers under her breath. David bent down and picked up one of the yellow documents from the ground. He held it high. "All these years, you told the village you lived in poverty because father died in an accident. You told them you raised us alone because you had no choice. But that was not the whole truth. Mother," his voice cracked with anger, "you knew exactly what happened the night father died." Gasps swept through the villagers. Heads turned sharply toward Grandma. Grandma's lips trembled, her knees shaking.
"No.
"David, don't do this. Not here.
Not now."
But David's voice rose louder, filled with bitterness. "You lied to us. You let us believe a false story while you carried the secret like a crown of shame. And because of your silence, we grew up in pain and hunger." Mary became bitter. "I ran away. And Rose," he glared at her, "Rose became tangled in the bloodline of the man who destroyed us." The villagers shouted in shock. Some demanded, "Tell us the truth, old woman." Others cried, "Is this why your family has suffered all these years?" Grandma broke down in tears, falling to her knees. "Please, David, stop. You don't understand. I kept silent to protect you." David's eyes burned with fury. "Protect us? Or protect yourself?" Rose stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "David, enough. If you truly are my brother, then speak the truth clearly. What really happened to father that night?" The square grew silent. Even the crackling fire in the torches seemed to hush. David looked around at the villagers, then back at Grandma.
"Fine.
"If she will not tell you, then I will." He lifted another paper, his hand trembling. "The truth is that father was not killed in an accident. He was murdered. And Mother knows who did it." The crowd exploded in chaos. People screamed. Others covered their mouths in shock. Some women fainted. The chief shouted for silence, but the noise was uncontrollable. Grandma sobbed, clutching her wrapper. "David, please. Stop tearing this family apart." But David's voice rose above the chaos, trembling with rage. The murderer was the same man who fathered Rose. Every heart in the square stopped. The villagers froze as if struck by lightning. Rose gasped and staggered back, her legs weak. Mary covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes wide. Grandma wailed, her cries echoing across the night. The villagers shouted angrily now. So, she is the child of the murderer? No wonder misfortune has followed them. This family carries a curse. Rose dropped to her knees, tears pouring down her cheeks. No, no. This cannot be. David's voice shook but did not break. It is true. That man killed our father, and then left his blood in this house. And mother, he pointed at Grandma, his voice cutting like a knife. You took in the child of the murderer and raised her as your own. The villagers were now divided. Some pointing fingers at Rose, others shouting at David for cruelty, and others demanding answers from Grandma. The square was a storm of voices, anger, and confusion. Grandma could barely breathe. Her body shook as she tried to speak. I did it because I believed love could erase hate. I thought raising her with kindness would heal the wound. But maybe I was wrong. Rose collapsed completely, sobbing into the dust. Her brother, her supposed brother, stood above her, declaring her the blood of the enemy. And then, just when it seemed the night could not hold more chaos, a sudden loud cry pierced the air. It was Mary. She staggered forward, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. She held a letter in her trembling hands, one she had snatched from the pile of documents. Her voice broke as she screamed, "No! You are all wrong. This paper says the man who killed our father is still alive." The villagers erupted in shock once again. David froze, his rage replaced with confusion. Rose lifted her tear-stained face. Grandma gasped so violently it was as though her heart had stopped. And in the shadows at the edge of the square, a figure began to move. Slowly, step by step, a man walked forward into the torchlight. His face was old, scarred, but unmistakable. The crowd screamed in terror, because it was the face of the man they all thought was dead for 40 years. The square froze as the scarred man stepped fully into the torchlight. His face was weathered by years, his clothes torn from travel, but his eyes, sharp, cruel, and familiar, cut through the crowd like a blade. Gasps and screams filled the air. Some villagers fled in fear, others stayed rooted to the ground, unable to believe what they were seeing. "It cannot be," Grandma whispered, her knees shaking. You are supposed to be dead." The man smirked bitterly, his voice rough like gravel. "Dead?
No, Marta.
I lived. I lived in the shadows while you told your little stories about me. But I am here now, and I will tell the world the truth." The crowd murmured. Some shouted, "Who is he?" Others whispered, "Is that the murderer?" David clenched his fists, his anger boiling. Tell them what you did to our father." The man stepped closer, his eyes flashing. "Yes, I killed him. But not out of madness, not out of greed. I killed him because your father betrayed me. He stole money that belonged to us both. He tried to take everything, and I would not let him. That night, when the fight broke out, I struck him down. And when it was over, Martha found me standing there." Grandma fell to the ground, weeping. "Stop. Please stop." The man pointed at her, his voice rising. "And instead of letting me be punished, you hid the truth. You lied to your children. You raised my child in your house. You turned her," he gestured to Rose, "into a symbol of shame and pity. But the truth cannot stay buried forever." Rose shook her head violently, her tears falling like rain.
No.
"I don't want this. I don't want your blood, your curse. I only wanted a mother, a family, a chance to love." The villagers were in chaos now, some spitting at the man, others shouting for justice. The chief raised his staff and roared, "Silence. We will hear the last of this tonight." David stood tall, his voice trembling with fury. "Then let me be the one to finish it. You destroyed our father. You destroyed our lives. But you will not destroy this family again." He lunged at the man, grabbing him by the collar. The villagers rushed forward, trying to hold him back, but years of rage fueled his strength. Rose screamed, Mary cried out, and Grandma fainted into the dust. For a moment, it seemed blood would spill again. But then Rose, shaking, broken, yet filled with something greater than pain, threw herself between them. Her voice cracked as she shouted, "Stop!" The crowd went silent. David froze, his fists still raised. The scarred man smirked, waiting for violence. But Rose stood tall, her eyes filled with tears and fire. "We cannot fight hate with hate. This is what destroyed us 40 years ago, and this is what will destroy us again, if we let it. Enough blood has been spilled. Enough lies have been told. We cannot change the past, but we can decide how it ends tonight." Her words fell heavy in the square. The villagers lowered their voices. David's fist trembled, but slowly, painfully, he let the man go. The scarred man laughed bitterly. "So, the billionaire daughter preaches peace. Tell me, girl, what will you do with me now? Call the police? Lock me away? Or will you forgive me like your foolish mother did?" Rose's voice broke, but she spoke clearly. "I am not forgiving you. Not tonight. Some sins need judgment. But I will not let you drag us down into your darkness. You will face justice, not my revenge." The chief nodded gravely. "Then it is decided. This man will be taken into custody and handed to the authorities. His crimes will not be buried under time." The villagers cheered in agreement, their voices finally united. Men stepped forward, seizing the scarred man, dragging him toward the waiting guards. He struggled, cursed, and spat, but for the first time in 40 years, his power was gone. Rose ran to Grandma's side, lifting her gently. "Mother, it's over. It's finally over." Grandma's frail hands clutched her daughter's, tears rolling down her cheeks. "My child, you turned our curse into light. You taught us that love is stronger than blood." Mary stepped forward, her anger gone, her face soft with shame. She knelt beside Rose and whispered, "Forgive me, sister. I was blind with envy. But tonight, I saw who truly carries this family. It is you." David bowed his head, his own tears falling. "And I was blinded by hate. But you carried the strength none of us could. Forgive me too." Rose embraced them both, her voice trembling. "We are family, and family must heal, not destroy." The villagers clapped and wept, touched by the sight. The chief lifted his staff once more. "Let tonight be remembered. Lies have been broken, truth has been revealed, and this family has chosen unity over hatred. May the next generation learn from this." As the crowd dispersed under the fading torches, Rose held Grandma close, whispering, "From now on, you will never know poverty again. You will live with me, in peace, for the rest of your days." And under the moonlit sky, with tears still fresh and hearts still healing, a family once torn apart by secrets found the first fragile steps toward redemption. Life lesson. No matter how deep the wounds of the past, hatred will only dig them deeper. True healing begins when we refuse to let anger control us, and when we choose forgiveness, not for the sake of the guilty, but for the peace of our own souls. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more touching video stories that inspire and heal hearts.